There are a number of reasons why transforming traumatic experience opens certain doors, portals, to spiritual experience. And I think it's important also to note that that doesn't mean that is a spiritual path, but can open to spiritual path. And one reason is because of the energies that are involved with responding to threat, especially life threat, are vast. If you think about an impala being chased down by a cheetah on the Serengeti, and they're running at 65 miles an hour, and then in a moment the impala falls to the ground as though it were dead, but it's not dead. This profound activation, this energy is still revving within the nervous system, within the body, within the organism. And in trauma, one of the things we do, and somebody left this here for me, which I really appreciate because I hadn't thought to bring it, but if we think about this vast energy and how it is collapsed in the moment when trauma takes over, when we're frozen, we can't open that energy too quickly, because if we do, it's an explosion. And this is something that I've noticed. I've worked with a number of people who have had premature Kundalini awakenings, where this energy just gets opened too quickly, and the nervous system, the organism, is unable to integrate it. But when we're able to titrate, to just open to this energy, one small amount at a time, we're able to shift these profound energies to those of openness, of oneness, of connection, of compassion.
The trauma work is absolutely necessary for our spiritual path. Yeah. And especially because many meditation hours are actually hanging around in dissociated spaces. And that's not what we want, because in the dissociated space we are not able to evolve our energy. Our energy can only evolve when it's connected. When we are disconnected, we are actually, there's no movement. And that's very important. And I think we more and more understand that grounding. And what does it mean, grounding? Just opening up the parts of me that I'm not experiencing anymore consciously. And landing again in life is the prerequisite for relation. And because we are not sitting in a cave in the Himalayan mountains, we are continuously relating. And relation is our social contemplation. You know, when the monk, I said this before in the workshop, when the monk has time to sit 10 hours a day, and we have time, maybe you sit 1 hour a day in the morning, there's a kind of an imbalance in flight hours. So we don't have enough practice time, but our daily experience is our practice time. So, because often our inappropriate relation creates a lot of trauma, so appropriate relation is the healing, and the appropriate relation is one of the fundamental spiritual practices.
You know, very often people who are attracted to meditation have a lot of trauma in their background. Probably the people who need meditation the most are the people who are successful in their business world and so forth. But those who generally are attracted to meditation are people who have a lot of trauma from their history. And what happens, I think, in meditation, when you have a lot of trauma, or significant trauma, a lot of trauma, capital T or small t, one way of avoiding dealing with the trauma is what I talked about in the counter vortex. So one goes into these beatific states, these bliss states, sometimes we call this the bliss bypass. So in working with trauma, we must hold together the contraction and expansion, the light and the darkness, because it's not all light. It has to be held together, and I think, again, that's one of the gifts that Trauma Transformed can offer to us, that we really learn how to hold polarities as a way of experiencing the non-duality of existence.
History in the spiritual community of separating healing trauma from the spiritual path. And I'm curious, in your experience, when you work with your students, when you begin seeing symptoms, do you see symptoms of trauma? Or when we become more open and available to life through our spiritual practice, we begin to feel more also the places that we have disowned. How do you work with that? How with your students and in your work as a spiritual teacher?
Yeah, basically, like as I understand the spiritual practice for us as people in culture, it's a mix between state practice and process practice. So we need state awareness to touch different states of consciousness, but we also need process awareness. And process awareness means that my spiritual practice is not about Thomas. My spiritual practice is not about my life even. My spiritual practice is about something much bigger than my life, my lifetime. So we often say, if you walk forever, you have time for this moment. If you don't walk forever, you are in a hurry. But when I am in a hurry, I don't relate to you because I'm already thinking what I should do afterwards. So I will not be here, and love cannot unfold when I cannot be here. So a state of presence means that I can be present in the current moment. So when we say that spiritual practice is also coming into alignment with the fundamental principles of life. And this means also the trauma, our trauma is just a kind of a reverberation of so many other trauma layers that are already in society, which means that we are dealing actually with the way, our ethical way of living. So the trauma healing is a coming back to a way of living where we really can create societies with less violence, with less wars, with many things that are less. And so the ethical part of our spiritual practice is as important as the state practice. And I think, so when we are in our groups, we see that the more we create coherent fields that are appropriately related, the fractures in the field become more obvious. So the trauma becomes more obvious through a deeper relational field and a deeper group presence. And so what we induce is a lot of group presence, that when one person speaks, many other people have the presence and the energy to really be there for that person. And that then all of us together are an amazing resource for healing.
Yeah.
And I think, as also what you say, Peter, that it needs a step-by-step process. So we need to know how to walk in the right dose, and I think that's an art.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really an artistic process that needs a lot of skill, and it needs a lot of attunement. So we learn how to use our nervous system in a very precise way to track trauma fields in other people, especially the people that are professionals, and how we relate to trauma layers on the layer of time-space where they happened.
Any person heals. And I think this is something you really said very elegantly. Every time anyone makes this shift affects everyone else. And it's a matter of exponential growth. You know, you do one here and another here and another here, and then the wave moves out, the wave moves out.
Beautiful, yeah, very beautiful. And I love this fixation, because as I said before, that we did a lot of work in Germany, also Germany, Israel, and one thing strikes me, that unconscious trauma energy is destiny. Destiny is unconscious energy has no choice. Putting people into concentration camps and killing them, that choice has been made already, but it's not finished. So unconscious energy is destiny, like an unconscious energy runs me because I'm not aware of it. So I will take decisions or do things that are, or be addicted to something that is not in my control. So we say in the mystical understanding, unconscious energy is destiny. There is no free choice. Free choice comes through consciousness. Consciousness allows new possibilities to come in. So in our understanding, the past is not what happened yesterday. The past is what stayed of what happened yesterday. When people go to exams at the university, or they need to take a serious business decision, and they say they are afraid, we culturally agree that people are afraid when they take exams, where in fact the fear has nothing to do with the exam. The fear has something to do with the person's past. And the fear might reduce my capacity to take decisions or act freely in this moment. But my past overshadows my moment. And that means that the past is only what is left and affects my moment through body sensations, emotions, and thoughts that have nothing to do with this moment. And the future is not what happens tomorrow. The future is the download of higher consciousness that changes my today. In other words, the update of myself today. So that's and I like that the update is blocked. Our innovation capacity is reduced. The more energy is held in these fixations of the past. And that's why I believe also here in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, everything that happened here consciousness-wise has something to say about the innovation that happens here. That a consciousness development allows more future to take place. When the future is not what happens, because for many intimate relationship arguments that you had 1 year ago, maybe 2 years ago, and you have it still. That's not the future. That's the repetition of the past. So past has a cycle to repeat itself until it's conscious. And so when we take this seriously and transfer it now to a collective dimension, it means all the energy that is still frozen in our collective unconscious, being it because of slavery and atrocities and racism, being it because of the Holocaust and other dictatorships and wars, that seriously affects our choices. Because that's destiny. That's the destiny of humanity, not the free choice. Yeah. And we think we have so much free choice. I mean, first of all, it's good to ask what it's free of. And secondly, it's kind of, that's not true. Many people that suffer from addictions show that you don't have a free choice to take the next cigarette or not, often. And so I believe that that's an important understanding, so that there is something in our culture that lives between us, that is in here, these fixations and these ripples, they are here in the room, sitting here without us noticing it.
Yeah, I would just summarize it that unconscious energy, destiny, fixity is destiny. It's fixed.
It's fixed.
There's no other way, like a machine. It
right.
just will continue and continue and continue. But then when we're able to move from fixity to flow,
right,
then it's not a matter of destiny, it's the matter of informed choice.
That's right. Right.
And again, I think when people meet together in conferences like this, or meetings, I wouldn't call this a conference, I would call it a meeting. It's for that reason. It's to, and you brought up the interpersonal part of it as being very important, because again, trauma is about broken connection.
That's right.
Broken connection to self, broken connection to other, broken connection to spirit.
Right.
So at any of those levels, we're able to move more out of the fixity into the flow, into the reconnection, into the new connections. Again, then we're just opening up one more area of the fixation and allowing the energy to come flowing.
Beautiful. So if we want to live up to our potential, so then trauma work is crucial. Because it's a data flow through us, and there's a transgenerational data flow through us. So we talk a lot about data in technology, but the data is flowing also through us. This is also technology in a way, biocomputer. And what Charles Eisenstein said today, I really like that, because I believe because of trauma and collective trauma, there is the notion as if people were on the planet.
Yeah.
And that my body, the water here and the carbon here, is animated planet. That's not on the planet, that is planet alive. So all what I said in the morning, it's so amazing to think about that the few generations that are alive right now hold the pearls of all the development that ever happened before. It's alive through electricity running through this nervous system and animating that creation for us. And we, as all the kids up to the oldest people in this world, hold the gem of life.
In other words, somebody, who's stuck in the fixity, the grip of trauma, everywhere they look, they're banging into their trauma. Every person they meet, they're banging into the trauma. Every relationship, they're banging into the trauma. But then as you work on it for a while, you kind of rub up against the trauma, but you move along. And it gets smoother. I mean, you think about it, the trauma at first is like a sharp piece of wood. And as you learn to move through it, then the wood becomes more like a surface, like a round surface. So instead of getting caught on it, you just rub against it and move through.
Question is not where will I get, but how do I walk? And I think in the unraveling of human life, we see that every step opens up new possibilities, and most probably the more we unlock, the more help we get. Because the future is all the time available for us as a resource. So this means the more fixations we open, the more resourced I believe we become, if we don't hurt each other again. And I think that's a beautiful process. So I think it's more about the walking, especially with the collective fields. They are so vast and big. It's not so easy to say, okay, we do this and then that will happen. Complex fields don't work that way. Healing, like as when you grow, your innermost intimacy is your central nervous system, like your self-contact. So when you're in connection with yourself, then from there you grow and create bigger and bigger circles of radius of relation. And the healing is when somebody starts to say, do I feel my pain or the pain of the world or the pain of all the women or the pain of... First, let's start with your pain, and when we are there, let's go to a bigger cycle, but not the other way around. Because usually this creates a lot of confusion, and then people bypass their own difficulties through dealing with the collective. That's not the collective work that we want to do. We want to first start here, and then when this is more stable, then to reach out and become aware of a bigger radius of, we call this radiuses of intimacy. Then I can really consciously experience more of the world in me. But there's a lot of confusion sometimes. People go too fast to collective issues, and then they're completely confused because we lose track of the energy. And I agree with what Peter said. When you're like, being on track with a client is that you're surfing on the energy of the moment, and the energy always tells you the truth. Energy never lies, because we are not caught up in interpreting the energy, we are looking how it flows, and that's why that's the best tracker to unravel the question between individual and collective issues, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about state and process. I mean, this is the process of becoming more alive and more embodied.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at minimum of a life's work.
Mm-hmm.